66 million years ago, life on Earth was about to face its last sunrise. A planet ruled by giants, a world of impossible beauty, a world that had no idea what was coming. Somewhere between Mars and Jupiter, a rock the size of a city had been traveling for millions of years. It wasn't a question of if it would hit, it was always going to. The countdown had already begun. But the dinosaurs didn't know. They couldn't know. This was just another morning, the last morning. This is the story of a single day, the most catastrophic day in the history of life on Earth. The Cretaceous period, a world 66 million years in the past, warmer, wilder, and more alive than anything today. A shallow sea split the North American continent in two. Its warm waters held monsters that dwarfed modern sharks. Mosasaurs, marine reptiles the length of a school bus, ruled every ocean on the planet. The forests were dense with ferns, cycads, and the first flowering plants. Life had never been so diverse. Herds of hadrosaurs moved across the plains in their millions, duck-billed dinosaurs as common as wildebeest today. And over all of it, the apex predator, Tyrannosaurus rex, 8 tons of muscle, bone, and biological perfection. Its footsteps could be felt 30 meters away. Every living thing within range knew when a T-Rex was near. This was not a world of mindless killing. Dinosaurs cared for their young, guarded nests, formed deep family bonds. The rivers ran clear and cold from young mountain ranges. Crocodiles, almost identical to today's, lurked in every bend. Above it all flew Quetzalcoatlus, wingspan wider than a fighter jet, the largest flying creature that has ever lived. Flowering plants had just emerged. Insects were evolving alongside them, co-evolution in its most beautiful early form. Along the coasts, titanosaur sauropods, longer than 3 double-decker buses, grazed on coastal vegetation. In the dark forest interior, raptors hunted in coordinated packs. Intelligence was already evolving in the dinosaur lineage. The Rocky Mountains were young and sharp. Triceratops herds roamed the alpine meadows, horns gleaming in morning light. Triceratops, 3-horned face, among the most successful animals ever to walk the earth. At that moment, Ankylosaurus carried a living weapon, a tail club of solid bone that could shatter a T-Rex's leg with one swing. The continents were in different positions. India was an island racing toward Asia. The Atlantic was young and narrow. The oceans were 10 degrees warmer than today, so rich with life that every cubic meter of water teemed with organisms. 6:14 in the morning. The day that will end, everything has begun like every other day before it. Somewhere in what is now Montana, a baby dinosaur broke through its shell. It was the last clutch it would ever join. The world was already under pressure. Massive volcanic eruptions in India had been slowly cooling the climate for millennia. The Deccan Traps eruptions were already weakening ecosystems. Life was stressed, but life was coping. Barely. True birds had already evolved from their dinosaur ancestors. They were small, numerous, and unremarkable. For now. Beneath the feet of giants, tiny mammals survived in burrows. Small, nocturnal, hidden, waiting for a world that didn't yet exist. Even as they lived, the world was preserving its record. Tree resin was entombing insects, future fossils forming in real time. This was Earth at its most extraordinarily alive. More species, more biomass, more vitality than almost any era before or since. Life continued its eternal rhythm. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted. The ancient cycle, repeated without interruption. Death was constant in the Cretaceous, but death had always led to renewal. Nothing had ever ended everything. Until now. In the western interior seaway, the morning was perfect. Warm water, clear skies, not a single sign of what was coming, But in space, the point of light had brightened. Any creature with eyes sharp enough would have seen it that morning. 12 kilometers across. Roughly the width of London, the width of New York, a mountain moving at 72,000 kilometers per hour. From this distance, the Earth looked peaceful. In approximately 4 hours, that would no longer be true. Faint streak had appeared in the morning sky above the Yucatan Peninsula. Nothing alive would look up and understand it. 3 hours and 47 minutes. The last hours of the age of dinosaurs. Every second, the asteroid drew closer. The moment Earth's gravity took hold was the moment the outcome was sealed. Nothing in the universe could stop it now. It would hit in what is now the Gulf of Mexico, near the Yucatan Peninsula, the worst possible location on Earth. The geology beneath that spot made the catastrophe far worse. The rock was loaded with sulfur. The impact would be chemical as well as physical. The Yucatan coast was tropical paradise, clear water above a limestone shelf. No living thing there could sense what approached. 2.5 hours out, an observer with perfect eyes might have seen a star that moved. It was moving at 20 kilometers per second. When it hit the top of the atmosphere, the asteroid didn't slow down. The air compressed ahead of it into plasma hotter than the sun's surface. The leading face of the asteroid began to vaporize. It was shedding mass at an incredible rate, but it was still 12 kilometers wide. From the ground, it would have appeared as a fireball 10 times brighter than the sun, crossing the sky in under a second. Animals felt it before they saw it. Electromagnetic disturbances, the hairs and feathers standing on end across the continent. A pressure wave blasted outward from the entry point, moving faster than any storm in history. Plants and trees bent as it passed. 3,000 kilometers away in Montana, the forest went strangely quiet. Every animal felt something. None understood what. The T-Rex's ancient instincts registered danger, but there was no prey, no rival, nothing visible, just a wrongness in the air. 60 kilometers above the Gulf of Mexico, the asteroid had taken 65 million years to get here. It had 3 seconds left. Its shadow swept across the jungle at the speed of sound. Dinosaurs below scattered. Some looked up and saw only blinding light. The air trapped between the asteroid and the ocean surface, compressed to conditions that exist only at the center of stars. A jet of plasma punched down into the seafloor before the asteroid even made contact. The impact had already begun. Impact. The energy released in the first millisecond was 2 million times greater than the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated. In the first second, a sphere of superheated gas 100 kilometers across vaporized everything it touched. Water, rock, and life. The crust rebounded. A mountain of rock 10 kilometers high momentarily rose at the crater's center, then collapsed. In minutes, the impact launched more rock into the stratosphere than the total mass of the Himalayas. Some of it escaped into orbit. The impact site no longer existed. In its place, a glowing crater 200 kilometers wide. The Yucatan Peninsula was gone. The impact displaced so much ocean that the resulting tsunami was 1.5 kilometers tall, taller than any mountain in England. The wave hit the Gulf coasts minutes after impact. Forests, beaches, and everything living within hundreds of kilometers, gone. The ejecta that had been blasted into orbit now rained back down across the entire planet. Every continent simultaneously saw shooting stars. The re-entering debris heated Earth's upper atmosphere to oven temperatures. The sky itself was on fire. Trees didn't need to be near the impact to burn. The radiant heat from the sky was enough to ignite forests across North America. The T-Rex ran. For the first time in its life, there was nothing it could outrun. The threat was everywhere at once. Hadrosaur herds stampeded blindly. The rivers were beginning to heat. Every escape route was becoming another danger. Within 15 minutes of impact, the sky over North America had turned the color of cooling metal. Then it got hotter. The impact triggered earthquakes measuring magnitude 11 or higher. Every fault line on Earth ruptured simultaneously. The Deccan eruptions, already ongoing, surged. The impact's seismic energy reignited volcanic systems across the globe. The Gulf of Mexico near the impact zone was boiling. Not metaphorically, Sapuaitan, the water was at boiling point for hundreds of kilometers. Underwater, the shock wave killed every marine creature within 1,000 kilometers by concussion. Internal organs ruptured instantly. 2,000 kilometers from the crater, the heat pulse had arrived, not enough to instantly kill, but enough to ignite vegetation. The rock vaporized by the impact was loaded with sulfur. Billions of tons of sulfur dioxide rocketed into the stratosphere. That sulfur cloud would circle the Earth within days. Mixing with water vapor, it would become sulfuric acid raining from the sky. Soot from the global fires joined the ejecta dust and sulfur cloud. Together, they would form a shroud around the entire Earth. 1 hour after impact, North America was unrecognizable. The sky was dark. Ash was already falling like gray snow. In caves and burrows, small animals huddled. They didn't know it, but their underground refuge was giving them a chance. Within 6 hours of impact, the tsunamis had reached every ocean coastline on Earth. The global coastline had been remade. Night fell on North America, but it was not real night. This darkness would not end at sunrise. It had no end in sight. Within 48 hours, the dust and soot cloud had encircled the globe. Sunlight could no longer reach the surface. Anywhere. On Earth. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped. In hours. The single most important biological process on Earth simply stopped. Plants began dying within days. First the leaves, then the stems. The enormous biomass of the Cretaceous forests began to collapse. Global temperatures fell off a cliff. Within weeks, the surface had dropped 20 degrees. Within months, most of the world was freezing. The great plant-eating dinosaurs faced starvation almost immediately. Their food, the entire basis of their diet, was disappearing. Within weeks, the largest dinosaurs were already weakening. Their size, once a superpower, was now a death sentence. Carnivores like T-Rex had food for now, the dying herbivores. But when the herbivores were gone, so was the food supply. The sulfuric acid clouds began releasing their contents. The rain that fell was acidic enough to strip bark from dead trees. Rivers turned acidic within weeks. Freshwater ecosystems, already stressed by cold and dark, collapsed under the chemical assault. The oceans began absorbing the carbon dioxide. Ocean acidification ate through the shells of ammonites and sea creatures within months. Ocean plankton, the very foundation of marine food chains, began dying in the darkness. The seas were going silent. Ammonites, creatures that had survived 3 previous mass extinctions over 300 million years, were dissolving in the acid ocean. Sauropods had never experienced cold. Their biology was built for warmth. Standing in even light frost was something they had no response to. Within 2 months of the impact, entire herds were dying together, not from predators, from cold, hunger, and physiological collapse. The pterosaurs went quickly. Their large bodies needed enormous amounts of food. With insects dying and fish gone, they starved within weeks. In the cooling, darkening oceans, the mosasaurs lost the warmth their bodies needed to function. They slowed, then they stopped. Underground, the story was different. Small mammals in burrows needed little food, little warmth. They could wait. They did wait. Most bird species went extinct, but a handful, small, seed-eating, able to go dormant, held on through the nuclear winter. Crocodilians buried themselves in mud and virtually stopped living. Their ancient, efficient biology was built for exactly this kind of disaster. Weeks after the impact, fires still burned across North America. Some would burn for months, fueled by the accumulated wood of millions of years. Small pockets of dinosaurs found temporary shelter and food. They lasted weeks, sometimes months, but the end was the same. The T-Rex, the most powerful land predator Earth had ever produced, was losing weight. There was nothing left to kill and eat. Its movements were slowing. The cold was sapping the biological furnace that had made it the world's greatest hunter. 6 months post-impact, average global temperatures had dropped 25 degrees Celsius. The tropics experienced their first frost in millions of years. Tropical organisms had no adaptations for cold. When ice formed on what had been warm ponds, everything in and around them died. Triceratops went to the places they had always drunk. The rivers had dried, frozen, or gone toxic. The herds died at the water's edge. The silence was the most devastating thing. A world that had roared and called and screamed with life, gone absolutely quiet. Fungi thrived in the death. They broke down the fallen biomass. The decomposers inherited the world of the consumers. Buried seeds survived the cold. Their hard coats protected them from the acid. They were the future. They just didn't know it yet. From space, Earth was unrecognizable. A gray, featureless ball wrapped in cloud and dust. No land visible, no blue water, just gray. 9 months after impact, sunlight had not returned. The dust and sulfur cloud was still impenetrable. The winter was still total. Species were going extinct by the thousands. Not just dinosaurs, pterosaurs, marine reptiles, most marine invertebrates, half of all species. The T-Rex's last breaths came in the dark, in the cold, in a landscape it could no longer recognize, a world it had ruled for centuries. And then it was still. One T-Rex, one moment. But multiplied across the world, this scene was happening millions of times every day. It would be 66 million years before another predator that size walked the earth. And that predator, us, would come from a different lineage entirely. The sky was empty. The largest flying creatures to ever exist had vanished. The airspace they had ruled for 150 million years stood silent. In the deepest oceans, far from the surface catastrophe, some life persisted. The deep sea, dark and cold as always, offered refuge. Freshwater fish in deep, cold lakes survived better than their marine cousins. The cold, ironically, was less lethal for cold-adapted species. Turtles had been burying themselves in mud through bad winters for 200 million years. This winter was longer, but the strategy worked. Insect eggs were buried everywhere, incredibly resistant to cold and acid. While the world died above, these tiny capsules waited. 1 year, 3/4 of all species on Earth were already extinct. The greatest mass extinction in 250 million years was underway. Then, very slowly, the dust began to settle. After more than a year, the first tiny rays of sunlight began to reach the surface. And where that first light fell, life responded. A seed that had waited in the dark soil pushed its first tiny leaf toward the sun. From the burrows, the survivors began to emerge. Small, timid, unimpressive creatures, the inheritors of the earth. They had survived not through strength or size, but through smallness, flexibility, and the incredible stubbornness of life itself. A bird sang, just once, tentatively. In a world of silence and ash, that single note was the most extraordinary sound in Earth's history. Then the seeds came. Everywhere the light reached, they germinated. The land was gray 1 week and tinged green the next. The insects hatched into a world without competitors and full of dead organic matter to consume. They exploded in number within months. 2 years after the impact, the immediate horror was over. The world was wounded beyond imagination, but it was still alive. Just. Time accelerated. Decades became centuries. Centuries became millennia. Life did what life always does. It filled every available space. 100,000 years later, the world looked almost recognizable. But the giants were gone. The small had inherited everything. Without competition from dinosaurs, mammals diversified explosively. In evolutionary terms, they instantly filled every ecological role. Birds, the surviving dinosaurs, radiated into thousands of new forms. They were the dinosaurs' legacy, and they were spectacular. 500,000 years after the impact, forests had fully recovered. But walking through them, you would have noticed the silence, the absence of great size. Among the mammal survivors, one lineage had something extraordinary: forward-facing eyes, grasping hands, and growing brains. Over 60 million years, that lineage would walk out of the trees, stand upright, grow brains no animal had ever grown before. Today, the crater is buried under a kilometer of sediment and jungle, but it's there, a scar 200 kilometers wide, the scar that changed everything. Today, their bones come back to us from the stone. Paleontologists spend years recovering what an asteroid destroyed in minutes. Each fossil is a message from that last day. A creature that lived, breathed, hunted, now speaking to us across 66 million years. In rock faces worldwide, a thin layer of iridium marks the exact moment. Below, a world of dinosaurs. Above, a world without them. That layer is thinner than a human hair in most places. Yet it marks the single most catastrophic event in the last 250 million years. The crow staring at you is a dinosaur. Every bird alive today is a living, breathing dinosaur. The extinction wasn't total. It never was. Crocodiles survived unchanged. Turtles survived unchanged. Life that had waited out catastrophes before knew how to wait again. We stand beside their bones in reverence. These creatures ruled for 165 million years. We have managed only a few 100,000. If dinosaur history were a 24-hour day, human history would be the last 90 seconds. We are the newcomers. They were the establishment. Scientists have drilled into the crater itself, pulling up cores of melted rock from the day of impact, reading the event from its own scar. From that core, they calculated everything: the speed, the angle, the energy, the chemical composition of the destruction. Hell Creek, Montana. The last chapter of the dinosaurs is written in these red and gray rock layers, their final pages preserved in stone. Each Triceratops skull took decades to form bone by bone in the late Cretaceous. Each takes years to excavate from its stone tomb today. The best paleontologists will tell you, when you touch a fossil, something happens. You feel the distance of time and then its collapse. The world healed. It always heals. Given enough time, life always finds a way back. The scar is there, but the patient survived. The world today is extraordinarily diverse, but it is a different world. The asteroid reset the evolutionary clock and started it again. Everything you see around you, every building, every road, every human face, exists because of that asteroid. We are the aftermath. We look at the same stars the dinosaurs saw, but we look differently, with curiosity, with instruments, with the ability to understand. We now watch the sky for asteroids. Because of what happened 66 million years ago, we know to look. The dinosaurs couldn't. We can. For the first time in Earth's 4.5 billion year history, one species is actively working to prevent an extinction event from space. In 2022, humans changed the orbit of an asteroid for the first time. We did what no dinosaur could. We fought back against the cosmos. We sit at the end of geological time's known record. 66 million years ago feels distant. In Earth's terms, it was last week. The link between then and now is unbroken. The bones and the living creatures are part of one continuous story of life on Earth. We cannot recover dinosaur DNA from fossils, but from their bone structure, skin impressions, and descendants, we know more than ever before. We now know many dinosaurs had feathers, even velociraptors. They were colorful, complex, behaviorally sophisticated. We had it wrong for decades. T-Rex is still being revised. Recent research suggests lips, better senses, and a complexity of behavior we're only beginning to understand. Watch a flock of starlings at sunset. You're watching dinosaurs. 160 million years of evolution, still alive, still extraordinary. The sun that rose on that last Cretaceous morning is the same sun setting tonight. The light is the same. The world beneath it changed everything. Come back to the beginning. That eye, that single, golden, reptilian eye. You know now what it didn't. What was coming with the dawn. 3/4 of all species. Everything that could not burrow, could not slow its metabolism, could not survive on almost nothing. Gone. What survived tells us something profound. Not the biggest, not the strongest, but the most adaptable. The ones that could wait out the worst. Survival was partly biology, partly geography, partly pure random chance. The evolutionary lottery was brutal. Most lost. A few won everything. If the asteroid had missed by just a few minutes of Earth's rotation, it would have missed entirely. No extinction, no mammals rising, no us. You exist because of that impact. Every person who has ever lived, every human thought, invention, love, war, the consequence of a rock from space. When a human hand holds a dinosaur bone, 66 million years collapses to nothing. Past and present touch. Time becomes meaningless. Stand on the Yucatan today, and the ground beneath you is the beginning of your story. The crater is hidden, but it is the reason you're here. There have been 5 great mass extinctions in Earth's history. Each time, life rebuilt. Each time, something new emerged from the ruins. Scientists now warn we may be entering a 6th mass extinction. This one not from space, but from a species that evolved after the last one. The dinosaurs teach us that nothing lasts forever. That size is no protection, that the world can change in a single day, and nothing survives unchanged. But they also teach us that life is astonishingly resilient, that even after the worst day in the history of complex life, something survived. Life is not fragile. Life is ferocious. In 66 million years, it has rebuilt from almost nothing to the extraordinary world we inhabit now. The lineage did not break. The evolutionary thread stretched from the Triassic through the asteroid and into your backyard. Dinosaurs still sing. T-Rex, the greatest predator that ever walked this planet. It lived for 165 million years as a lineage. We have managed a few 100,000. On that last day, the world was perfect. It had been perfect more or less for 165 million years. Then it wasn't. In the final seconds, some creatures would have looked up, seen the sky turn white, felt a heat unlike anything in living memory. Then nothing, and then the silence. The great silence between the age of reptiles and the age of mammals. The long pause in the story of life. Time healed it. Time always heals it. 66 million years is incomprehensible. But it was enough. It was exactly enough. And here we are, the inheritors. Alive because of a catastrophe we can barely imagine, building a civilization on the ruins of a lost world. Look up tonight. The asteroid came from up there. So did the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, everything you are. The universe is full of asteroids. It always was. It always will be. We live in a shooting gallery. The dinosaurs found out the hard way. 66 million years ago, an eye like this closed for the last time. Look around you. Everything you see exists because it did.